This lesson explains a class that runs in threads. It starts running and its constructor is the main thread, and the constructor also spins off a separate thread. Both threads, running independently, go into infinite loops and display lines of text as output at regular intervals. This is the simple thread class, which is going to be executed as two separate threads, so it implements the runnable interface. The only requirement of a class that implements this interface is that it contain a public void run method. We'll get to the run method in just a minute, but right now let's look at some of the other things contained in the class. This is the declaration of a thread object. It's declared outside of any method, so we'll be able to address it from any method of the class. This accessibility comes in handy under certain circumstances, but we're not going to be doing anything that complicated with this first demonstration of threading. Here is the top of the constructor where the thread object is created. Any valid object could be specified as the argument to the thread constructor. The requirement is that an object of the runnable type be used as the argument to the constructor, and since the current object is a runnable object, it can be used to construct the thread. There is nothing else to do in the constructor, so the start method is called to put the thread into action. At this point, the thread named other goes off on its own and does things in its own time. This while statement is what is known as an infinite loop. That is, once this while loop begins execution, it will continue to execute because true will always be true until the program is halted. At the top of the body of the loop, a line of text is output to the screen. Also, inside the body of the loop, a call is made to the sleep method of the thread class. Now, this is a static method, so it doesn't have to be called from any object of the class. Anybody can call it from anywhere. It's just part of the thread class for convenience. It seemed to fit better there than anywhere else. All the call does is cause this particular thread to sleep for a full second before the method returns. In this example, the sleeping simulates the program going off to do something and coming back. The value 1000 is 1 second because the delay time is specified in microseconds. The call to the sleep method must be inside a try block because if something happens to terminate the sleep early, an exception will be thrown. Placing a call to sleep outside of a try block will cause the compiler to issue an error message. But anyway, the constructor will loop forever and output a line of text once a second. This is the run method that's called by the thread. As you can see, this method also has an infinite loop. And this infinite loop also outputs a line of text identifying itself. There is also a sleep method in this loop, but in this case, the sleep pauses for 2.6 seconds between outputting lines of text. This means that the main thread will produce more than twice as many lines of output as this other thread. Compiling and running the program looks like this. You can see from the text coming out at intervals that both threads are running separately. Each one is doing its own thing in its own time. This is going to help us with animation by allowing the program to pay attention to the mouse and keyboard at the same time it's painting one frame after another of the animated action. A rudimentary form of doing this is in the next lesson.